Without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite our first speaker of today. Please join me in welcoming Caspar, Managing Director of ProductIP, to present the EU Digital Product Passport, key to keep access to the EU market. Welcome, Caspar.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome at the summit. Today's topic, Digital Product Passport, is quite relevant. If you want to keep access to the EU market with your product, so if you're shipping from China directly to the EU, or if you are a buyer in the EU and want to import, you cannot live without a digital product passport in the future. So this might be a new theme for you, a new word, but it will definitely be part of the import and export vocabulary. So DPP, the short, the digital product passport, is coming. It looks like a passport, but everybody can and will probably design its own. It's not a standard in a shape, but it is a concept of sharing information. And I will take you along some larger topics that have led to the digital product passport in general. Is it an option to have it? It's not. It will become mandatory. So without a passport, you will have no entry to the market. It's like a passport that you need to enter any country. Will it be checked at the customs? From 2028, it will be checked by customs for parcels that are underway from producers in China directly to consumers in Europe. For all other products, it's something that the consumer can check in the market by itself, or market surveillance authorities can check and verify what your effort was with respect to product compliance. To understand why the product digital passport is there, you need to have a look at the larger themes. There's a lot of things going on this planet. We're actually eating up the planet a little bit faster than we should. So we need to consider how can we protect the resources that are there? How can we reuse the resources that we are using? How can we prevent the waste that we produce? I think we all remember those large parcels that we receive at home, and you shake it and you think, yeah, my USB stick arrives. Why is it rattling in a box with a lot of air? Are we shipping air? Are we just transporting air? Most likely we are doing that. Or you are ordering something via e-commerce and you receive it in a very expensive double clamshell, which doesn't make sense for e-commerce because a double clamshell is a retail packaging. So we'll need to make conscious choices about what materials we use and how we use it. We had the option to voluntarily make those choices, but we are not doing it sufficiently. So the EU government, but also other governments, are setting goals to reduce waste and reuse waste and making it more mandatory to start to operate along certain lines. And the digital product passport is a placeholder where you confirm that you actually have done it. And it is a promise that you make. It's not a voluntarily promise. It's like a legal promise, like a signature on a contract. If you really want to introduce the reasoning behind all this to your team, have a look when you're back from the trade shows at something that is called Country Overshoot Day. This is a graph that shows how long it has taken your country to eat up its part of the resources of this planet. And you'll be surprised, but Qatar managed to eat up the resources that they are entitled to in February, and the country where I live from in the Netherlands on April 1. And that's not an April Fool's joke. I think it's a very nice way to demonstrate how we are consuming, and it's unrealistic to think that we can manage everything in 1 year, but it gives you a reasonable comparison. When you convert all that plans that everybody's making into legislation, let me take you to the station in Brussels, where every platform is a topic, like Green Deal and Digital Age and a Stronger Europe, etc., etc. So the platforms are the main topics, and from those platforms depart trains. This is the scope of legislation that ProductIP is looking at for you, but this is also the scope that slowly and slowly becomes applicable for businesses. Not every industry and not every product is touched by all 600 plus legislations. But the core is quite standard because, for example, legislation about packaging is irrelevant of the product. Food or non-food, it has plastic, it has paper. What we are also seeing is that besides suspect or aspects around product compliance, we are also adding aspects around the supply chain. So it's not just about reducing paper or reducing plastics, we're also entitled to have an opinion on the way we are making the product and even the impact on the natural resources. So these are 17 United Nations SDGs. At ProductIP, we have called this, and still call this, a legislative tsunami because it's really overwhelming. It's really overwhelming. One way is to try to attack every of those 660 changes one by one, but that's impossible. You really need to start to read in between the lines and make your organization flexible, agile, adaptable to the core themes of this legislation. Circular economy, supply chain due diligence, transparency about what you do. If you make claims like the product is recyclable or the packaging can be compostable, it must be true, certified by third parties. Those are the general trends. If you make your company aware of those general trends, it doesn't matter if somebody has 10, 20, 500, 600 pieces of legislation, because the company in general already is thinking along these lines. So if you make a SWOT analysis of your companies with the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats, then you need to start to incorporate these trends in your analysis. Can we as a company adapt? Do we know with whom we are doing business? Should we still do the business as we do it today? Yeah? The last point is also relevant. If you are organizing your compliance material today around SKUs or sets of SKUs, and you need to change that into a rhythm that is called batch, that is definitely a different kind of process, regardless of 600 legislations or 20 or 10. If you cannot maintain information linked to batches, then you cannot participate in this kind of thinking. So I encourage you to not be distracted by the number of legislation, but focus on the trends. These things must change, and these are mandatory, and they accumulate in a digital product passport. I'll give you an example. How legislations and UN SDGs come together with, for example, toys. In the traditional way, we look at toys compliance and think toys must be safe. Safe for our kids to play with. Totally makes sense. In the new thinking, it doesn't make sense at all, as this scope is not enough. What do we know about the way the toys are made? It's nice that the kids that play with the toys are safe. But if the kids that make the toys are not safe, then these toys should not be called toys. Or if kids that live into the neighborhood of a factory where adults make toys, and they are not safe because of the pollution of the factory, then we should not call those toys safe toys. The toys should be safe for everybody involved in the making and using of the toys. So you can say we have 4 options. We can have non-safe toys made by kids. We can have safe toys made by kids. We can have non-safe toys made by adults. Or we can have safe toys made by adults. Which one do you want? I want to have safely toys made safely by adults. That would be nice. So there's actually only 2 options. We want compliant toys or non-compliant toys, and we don't need non-compliant toys. And compliant means supply chain and product conformity. So the thinking needs to be away from the word safe. There's too much time we hear safe. The product needs to be compliant equal safe. No, the conformity is a much broader scope. And the same goes for packaging. Yeah, the packaging can be recycled and is used by recycled material. Yeah, made by kids. In a factory that destroys the water of the river where the people eat from 20 kilometers downstream and cannot eat fish because they can die from the fish from that river because somebody makes recycled paper. It doesn't make sense. So supply chain and product compliance together is called conformity. I don't blame us for being here today. We have grown together to this point, and we must realize that we have to change our way of thinking in the next years. This is not something you can change overnight. But you, as buyer with buying power, have the chance to change something. Give you an idea about packaging. 50% of the single-use paper and single-use plastic is used for packaging. We know that this is for the European market, that the total number of packages will double in the years to 2030. So we will have twice as much units of packaging. But we want to reduce the material use by 50% of today. That's 25% of the future. You cannot do that in 2029. It takes really, really years to adapt. And you know, the new packaging regulation is now in concept agreed on. Let's say they voted for that in 2 months, and they say the transition period is 18 months. You are buying already for Christmas next year. You are already buying for the period with the new legislation. There is not a lot of time to grow into this anymore. All of these things accumulate in a digital product passport where you have to say something about these changes in legislation. It's like a declaration of conformity, accessible by market surveillance authorities and consumers in store. So you cannot repair it afterwards. You cannot say to the authorities, oh, you want a declaration of conformity? I'll make it for you. That's what you not say. But I'll make it now and I'll send it to you today. The digital product passport will give them access to this information in store already. So it's either there and correct, or it's not there, which is not correct, or it's there and not correct. So there's no escape. The passport itself is a placeholder of information about compliance of the product and information about the supply chain. It gives me as a consumer a choice, like an energy label. You know, I can buy a wash machine with energy label A or C. I can buy batteries with a kind of performance label. I can buy a lawnmower with a repairability index that is very good or very poor. So I know this one is a little bit cheaper, the other one is more expensive. Where do I put my money? Put my money in something that is more expensive but use less energy? Or do I want to buy a little bit cheaper product, but I know when it's damaged, I need to pay maybe a little bit more for repair? Okay, if you're not an intensive user of a product, that might be the right choice. But at least you were informed the moment you make the decision. So the surprise is gone. And repairability is something that is already introduced in the French legislation for many products. So this is not something that I make up. It's not Caspar selling bullshit here. It's already reality. Yeah? Eco-friendly, reducing waste, circular economy, being able to reuse materials is really part of the future economy. All this information needs to be easily accessible via a QR code, or if you are an online seller, of course, on the page where you offer the product. That's what I mean with everybody has access to what should be there immediately without they call you up first and say, hey, I need this information. That is really a game changer. This information needs also to be able to be accessed by the Googles of this world. So if you make a search, then those search engines can actually compare products. This is not new. Energy labels can be found as well. If you Google for a refrigerator, you get pricing information and energy label information all together. But if your company says, yeah, no problem, we have all this data and we store it on a computer somewhere, then this doesn't mean it's accessible by search engines. So, this information accessible to search engines, it has consumer interaction. Don't forget, it's digital, but the EU has many countries with their own languages. But it's better to offer explanation in languages online than to print manuals in a world where we don't want to use paper. It doesn't make sense to have, on one hand, legislation that says less paper, and on the other hand, you need to explain everything to consumers on paper. So, the explanation will be digitally, but still in many languages. Mandatory fields. Yeah, if we agree that weight is weight and we display weight in grams and not in kilos, we will all do it in the same way. It doesn't make sense if everybody invents his own energy label. Otherwise, you cannot compare. 10 years available very interesting. So that is already with Declaration of Conformity 2. Yeah, I put it on my commercial website, but I just changed the commercial website. Now the information is gone. Hey, we buy this company, we don't use the brand anymore, we switch off the brand, the information is gone. So if you design a digital passport platform, ensure that this URL is there for the next 10 years. If it's batch related, it's in sync with business. It's not something like a PDF that you make and upload and then stay there for the next 3 years, where sometimes thresholds change. For example, packaging. At a certain stage you are allowed 30% of recycled material, then it becomes 50%, then it has to be 70%. Oh yeah, but Caspar, it's the same box. I mean, same dimensions. Ah, I know. But the statement changes, the data parameters change. You need to monitor this per batch rather than per design. So stay in sync with business. It's not difficult. Well, it will change processes. Yeah. So the drop shipping will be the first part that really will be confronted with access to the European market. The European market is redesigning its outer market customs processes. There's over 100 different systems. It will become one. And without a digital product passport reference, 2028, drop shipping from outside the EU, from America, from Mexico, from Brazil, from India or China to the EU market without a passport will no longer be possible. Can we create it? Well, yes. In fact, you have to create it yourself. Of course, ProductIP is building the systematic behind it for the users of ProductIP platform. But some of our customers will say, Caspar, just give me the data. So can I export the data and can I build my system myself? Yes, you can. The EU is not going to build this, and I think that's a wise decision. I think many big brands will want to have their own passport, maybe as part of an app experience, maybe have loyalty programs, etc., attached, or explanations or videos. There is a core of a digital product passport what have to be there, and then you can have add-ons if you want. You know, if you have the digital interaction with the customer already, why don't make it a commercial one as well? It's not forbidden if it's not in contrary with the information in the digital product passport. Ah, that's great. We already have a process. Can we use it? Yeah, you can use any process. You can do it by hand. I don't care. But I can tell you, if your process is we Google, we put it in Excel, and we stare it in Dropbox, and then we put post-its on the wall because we need to have reminders, and then, etc., I can tell you, this process will not be sufficient for operating a digital product passport. Unless you're a one-guy band with a one product, you might be able to do that. But for a reasonable size business, this I don't call a process. This process will really kill your business. And your IT department probably is not reading 660 different types of legislation to think, oh, that's interesting. Let's make a digital product passport. And you see a lot of single topic solution providers around that. But most of the customers that we know, they have a lot of different products. And they want to vary their program. They don't even know from who they're going to buy what in the next 4 years. So you cannot just build it. You need to build and maintain it. Yeah? When will what start? Well, the passport principle itself is not a legislation. The reference to the digital passport concept is written in legislation. So in time, more and more legislations will be released, and they will all refer to the concept of making information available to the public via a QR code or similar digital mean. I've already seen one company that says, I'm using NFC. You can use your phone and then have an NFC scan and you go to the digital product passport. It's not written down in the legislation as a valid option. By the way, if you add NFC coil to packaging, that packaging will become electronics. And you have RoHS compliance and CE on the packaging. I don't think the packaging will be very much recyclable as well. So I don't think it's a good idea. What is first? Batteries. Especially the batteries for small means of transport, like e-bikes and scooters, but also batteries to store energy over 2 kilowatt hours. I walked the show, there's many of them. they will need to have a battery passport. And that battery passport will also tell you something about the efficiency of the battery. Because you can have two kind of batteries with the same capacity, and one can maintain the capacity after 100 charging cycles, 500 charging cycles, 1,000 charging cycles, and the other one cannot. And there's a price difference. But if I don't expect a lot of charging cycles, I might be interested in a little bit cheaper one. So what is cheap and cheerful for you might not be cheap and cheerful for something else. And we need to be able, as a consumer, to compare and then make a decision and not be surprised by what we got. The next one will be the General Product Safety Regulation, end of this year, which will require, first of all, a digital address on products. And from there needs to be an option for a consumer to interact with the brand owner in case something is wrong with the product. It's actually like online sellers need to behave like sellers with a real store, where you can actually go with your product to somebody at the cash register or the help desk and say, I have a question about this. Okay, so we put our website on it, and then we put our telephone number on it. No. This is not allowed. It should be a form. And that form should have a ticket system on the other side, because you need to monitor and prove that you are able to respond to those requests within a number of hours, 3 working days. Which makes sense, because if I'm in the store and I have a problem, I also don't want to wait for days till somebody actually show up and say, hey, do you have a question? Can I help you? Yes, I have a question. I have a lamp that burned. So you need to start to interact digitally. Toys and packaging legislation will be signed off soon. We have looked at the draft text. The draft text already of this legislation been voted on. They are agreed in Europe. They're not just ratified the final version, but it's very, very clear that there's a lot of digital product passport aspects in those legislations. But there is one regulation in France that already is like a digital product passport, and that is the French Decree 2020-748. So I would say time is running out, because if you are already producing something for France today, you already actually should be doing this. And if you look at the information that you need for France, I think many of you would say, ooh, this is not so easy. Because you need to have very much detailed information about packaging. How much of the paper and plastic used is coming from recycled sources? And how much actually can be recycled? Material of the product. How much material of the product is actually coming from recycled sources and can be recycled? The can be recycled part of packaging must be minimum 50% weight on weight, to give you an idea. Any electronics, any precious metals there, any rare earths. Substances of very high concern. Oh, but Caspar, we just always register at the SCIP database in Finland. No. In France, not. In France, you must tell the customer that there are substances of very high concern in the product. And I can tell you, if you have a little bit complex electronic products, there will be substances of very high concern in there. So it's not something that you can say, we don't have it. I can tell you most of you probably will have it. If you are in apparel and footwear, you need already to show information about the supply chain. Where is the cotton made? Where is the cotton dyed? Where is the t-shirt made out of the cotton? Where is the raw material coming from the shoes? Where has the soles and the overhead been produced? And who had made the shoe into a shoe? Where? It's not so difficult. Well, if you have a lot of shoes and a lot of apparel, it starts to become a little bit difficult. Yeah? This is already there today. If you don't believe me, go to this website of this company called Apple, go to those links, and you will find what they are displaying. Yeah, that is difficult. No, this is a big company. They don't have a lot of products, but for them, it's also a lot of work. For us, these kind of informations need to be collected somewhere from the supply chain. We send people an Excel sheet. Okay, great. Who did we send the Excel sheet already? Who has filled it out? Who's changed the columns? Who put a comma where there should be a dot? Or who put a dot where there should be a comma? Then you are losing time and money on data collection. So in ProductIP, we provide you with means to collect the data relevant for the products. We start with smart forms that we call verifier forms that you can send out. You get the data back into the file, and you can activate that file as you can make it public and just release what information you want to release public via the QR code. And once we are sure that those data points become really, really definitive and final in legislation, we start to hard program it. So we can adapt to the situation. To give you an idea, in total for the product scope that we follow, which is non-food consumer goods in general, we have identified over 1,000 data points. From geolocations where the tree was, to the means of transport from warehouse to factory, from factory to harbor, from harbor to harbor, from harbor to warehouse. Was it a Euro 5 diesel or Euro 4 diesel? Was it an electrical vehicle? All those things are data points. Yeah? I don't think that you are in the data point managing business in the compliance area. That's what we are doing. And we are doing that for a long time. Longer than this, but QR code access to public information, and this is not a type error, we have since 2010. I can even send pictures to you guys where we're walking on this show with t-shirts with a QR code. In fact, in 2010 was not even this show, it was the other show. So there's many companies that use this public functionality already. And so it's proven that it works, and it also creates confidence at the consumer. Where should you start today, regardless of product or legislation? Do yourself a favor and start mapping your first-tier suppliers. Are we really sure that we know with whom we are doing business? And if it's a trader, that's fine, but then you need to go to the second tier already. So then you know the trader, and behind this is really the factory. Most likely, the factory will not be the one that produced the packaging. Then you go one tier further. From who do we get the packaging? Also, start to think about, this is the golden 20/80 rules, which 20% of my product gives me 80% of my margin and turnover. Because I want to know when shit hits the fan, and it will hit the fan, where do I need to focus? Otherwise, you put a lot of energy in a part of the supply chain that actually you just can cut off. Because it's there, but it's only rubbish and noise and no longer business. Because your business case will definitely change. This information gathering takes time. Yeah? Give yourself time. I don't mention weeks, months, quarters. And every time you place orders and money flows, you can change. This planet, you can change things when money moves from A to B. Because then you have the right to ask a question and demand an answer. Consider if you want to use ProductIP as a tool. If not, consider if you're going to build it yourself. If you want to learn more about this, you contact me after the show. Because I'm pretty sure your IT team is struggling keeping up with the commercial part of your business, which is good because you need to sell in order to earn money. And they are not so busy with looking at Brussels and thinking, how does our IT system deal with digital product passport? And once you are talking with them, can we scale? Can we grow? Can I add during the next trade show new suppliers? And when I add a new supplier, do we have an onboarding process? Can we do due diligence? Do we have partners that certify? These are things that you need to sort out and take time. Don't try to sort them out in once. Make a list of these things that you need to do and agree with yourself to make an appointment with your team to start picking these up as sub-projects. If you don't start with a meeting, then this will drop off the table and nothing will happen. And I will be pleasantly in October telling you the same story for the same people, and nobody will tell me afterwards, we made progress. I want you guys to come to me and say, Caspar, we made progress. That's good. Long-term vision as well. This is looking at the European legislation, 2028, 2030, 2035. But don't think that things will be postponed. These are international goals and agreements made, and they will follow up on this. This is Kyoto, Paris, Glasgow. Every year they have a COP meeting and somewhere on the planet, and they make goals, and they will punish themselves financially if they don't achieve those goals. So if they delay the packaging legislation in Europe for 1 year, then they will just impose it faster on us to reach the same goal in 2030. So don't wait for them to make things. Start to build your own vision as a company. where do I feel myself comfortable with? What kind of story do I as a brand want to tell to the market? Do it together with your stakeholders. That could be financial partners, that could be brand owners, but also customers. Start talking and address this topic with customers to see what kind of priority they have. Market leaders rely on us for that because it's a proven track record. It's software as a service, so the IT investment that we do is a little bit coming to the market file by file. So it's our investment, but the burden is shared by 29,000 global users already. That makes perfect sense. We have pleasure in reading 660 different legislations and keep track of that and make something actionable that you have pleasure to follow up commercially. So that is why market leaders use ProductIP. Keep track of us. We are here for Q&A. This information will also be shared to you via global sources. Sign up for our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, or if you have a smartphone, who doesn't have a smartphone, download the ProductIP app. It's there for Android or, of course, for Apple iOS, and you will instantly getting updates. We don't have a lot of updates. We're not spamming you, but you will be on track for the big changes in the market. Thank you very much that you took the time to be here on this third day of the show. I know you have other things to do. Go do them, and talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Caspar, for your sharing. I'm sure the audiences now have a better idea on digital product passport for accessing into EU market. So now we have our Q&A session. If there are any questions to Caspar, please raise your hand, and then we will bring the microphone to you.
Thank you. I highly appreciate your great idea on digital product passport. However, this can be applied only to the EU countries, or can this apply to USA, Canada, and the other countries worldwide as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not restricted to the EU. The concept of sharing information via QR code, it will become mandatory for the EU, but a similar kind of legislation is already available in other countries or developed in other countries. It's same with the French legislation. It's not forbidden to share that same information to the Dutch customer or a German customer or an American customer. But there's one general rule. If you make claims about certain information, or that something is recyclable, or something is used by or made from recycled material, the general rule in different markets will be, it must be true. And true must mean certified by somebody else. So in today's world, we can make a packaging and say, this packaging is made by 50% recycled plastic, or it can be compostable, you can throw it in the garden. Any of those claims need to be substantiated by third-party certification. That is the global trend. If you want to call things digital product passport in America, nobody will be against it. But the main concept for this is driven this moment by EU legislation. But feel free to use it globally. Yep.
Thank you for your question. Once again, thank you, Caspar, for your sharing.